All right, welcome to VMware Explore 2024, day one. John, my favorite part about Explore is there's so many different sessions, there's customer meetings, there's all kinds of stuff, but there's also like great conversations to be had in all verticals, in all various technologies here at VMware.
Well, what's interesting is I come from the more traditional, normal, what I call the normal enterprise data center. Everything fits into a 42U rack. Of course, Everyone knows exactly how tall one of those are. And, people deploy things out in other places, but, that's a distant problem. I like the cold whine of my overly chilled data center, the hum of the raised floor. And
do you like the warm aisle or the cold aisle? What's your preference?
Well, if I forgot a jacket, I'll go hang out on the warm aisle. But there is a lot of compute that's out there, and there's all these customers doing all these very different things out on the edge.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, coming here and hearing the different use cases beyond my well-chilled room.
Absolutely. And so joining us today to talk about edge compute from VMware by Broadcom is VP and General Manager Saadat Malik. Saadat, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, so Saadat, I know you've been at VMware for a little while, but it's not but you've been working in edge for quite some time.
Yes, Pete. So I have been with VMware for about a year and a half now, but my journey through edge has been far longer. I've been in this space now for over 2 decades.
Oh, really?
So been in various types of roles. I started the IoT business at Cisco many years back, and then I ran the intelligent edge business at HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and now I'm here. So I have been through all sorts of iterations and evolution that this area has gone through. And the excitement that we have when we are not deploying it in a data center, but in an electrical substation with our lives at risk.
Yeah. So, John used to kid a lot on the podcast early days, and he would always liken anything that was in remote offices as like, one customer and that's sharing a telco closet with a PBX, and the same person has to change the one backup tape, and like that's everybody's vision of like remote office. But that's certainly maybe that is the case.
Yeah, it was
sometimes.
Like a branding issue. Everyone would say everything's remote office, branch office, and anything that was less than a million cores was that. And it's like there's a lot of weird distinctions there.
Yeah,
you mentioned the telco, and I know there's a lot of like weird standards of like this stuff needs to run on DC power potentially, or has various shock tolerances or things like that. I'm sure you've seen that. Like what all are some of the distinct operating concerns?
Yeah. So edge is a very broad term, right? So depending upon which industry that you're looking at, there are variances. So for example, we operate very heavily in the manufacturing space. Okay. So in the manufacturing space, edge for us is the factory floor, where all the PLCs, all the robots are making things, right? When you look at retail, for us, the edge in the retail is the actual store, right? With all the shelves and all the things that are happening in the store in terms of inventory management and making sure that the customers are satisfied. If you look at the electric utilities, for us, the edge there is electrical substation, where there are RTUs and other things that are running to make sure that you get the electricity that you need. So edge for us, right, it varies dramatically in terms of how it looks and feels. But the one thing that is common here is that a lot of this is operational technology, or what we call OT as opposed to IT.
Yeah.
Right? So it's operations technology, very heavily hardware-centric. So this is an environment which was built on hardware. You deploy a hardware like a programmable logic controller on a factory floor, and then you basically use that for decades, right, essentially to do what you're supposed to be doing. We are bringing a transformation into this area and taking it from a very hardware-focused environment to a software-defined edge. So
that's interesting. You mentioned the life cycle on like going out to 10 years and things, because traditionally in the data center, people will say, "Oh, this server's 3 years old. We've gotten good use. 5, we're getting long use out of it."
Yes.
And beyond that, it's like, okay, can I even get microcode updates for the CPU anymore? Versus you're starting to you've got longer commitments that you have to make when you say we're going to support this software that we're pushing out there.
Right.
We're going to have to iterate it on hardware, find hardware that the hardware manufacturer is willing to support for that 10-year cycle and things
Absolutely.
like that.
The life cycle is very different, right? So I'll tell you a story about this, right? So in one of my earlier projects that I did, it was in Canada, and we were basically deploying smart metering environment for a customer there, and part of it was in a city, but a lot of it was also in the hills, in the mountains that they have up there. So for some of those deployments, right, you actually have to fly a helicopter out there.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So you cannot actually go out there and
to
put
get
a
to the transmission line where you're putting the metering or the sensing box.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You take a helicopter there. It's a $50,000 gig. You take a helicopter there, you put it up there, you come. So as part of the project, it was, so at one point, the customer was not very happy with some of the features that we had in our router. I used to work at Cisco at that time. So they were not very happy with it, and we like a typical response.
The cost of the router versus the cost of the trip to the router are so abnormally.
Rental of the helicopter.
We told them that, look, don't worry about it. Like in 2 years' time, we'll have a new router, and you will have all the features that you want on it. And they looked at us funny and they laughed and said, really? Really? You would want us to change
this
that
goes
router?
Completely against the just-in-time trends of like, you know what? I'm going to buy these 25 gig switches, and in 2 years I'll throw them away and buy 100 gig in the data center.
Yes.
Versus, just the cost unit economics of this merchant silicons coming down. Versus that type of concern of I need to future-proof the hell out of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, right? That's what what happens is that when people look at the edge, sometimes some of the actual technology is similar. So they look at it and say, oh yeah, should be the same. Well, not really. It's not the same. The people who are running this are very different. They're not the same people that are running the data center.
The operational runbooks for OT networks are wildly different because everything's air-gapped.
Absolutely. The regulations that manage this, the processes are very different. And the technology itself now is becoming different. It's not the same thing, right? So if you look at the servers that we're deploying at the edge, they're no longer the same servers that you deploy in the data centers. They are smaller form factor, often fanless, often have ruggedization requirements and such.
Well, I've seen an SD card or like a small device, a boot device like an M.2. The industrial one will cost twice as much, and I'm like, oh, this is some silly tax. Then I look at the thermal, and it's like, oh, this works to -40 and 140 Celsius. I'm like, oh, okay, so that is a bit different. Like,
very different.
The cooling can fail, the implications. So, what do we bring from a technology stack?
How does the edge
to help solve these challenges, help future proofing, help portability? What do we bring?
Yeah, Don, that's a great question, right? So, what's the value add from our company? What do we bring to the table? So first of all, what we are doing is that we are helping these customers of ours understand what transformation can do for them, what this transformation can do for them. So a lot of our customers in these environments, they are very focused on hardware and looking at the life cycle of the hardware before they can change anything, the way they do run their business on the factory floor, for example. We are changing that mindset. We are saying to them that, look, you need to understand that if you move to a software-centric environment, you can update things faster, you can change things around more, you can bring in new innovation in a way that you've not been able to bring in for the last 50, 60, 70 years. You can actually do it every day. So first thing that we're doing is helping them understand that there's a different mindset, there's a different ball game out there that you can be playing. And that will be your competitive advantage as you go out and compete with other people out there. Second thing that we are doing is that we are bringing to them. So once they buy into this, right, that, okay, yeah, we would like to have a software-defined edge. The next question is, how do you run that edge? How do you make sure that you can run it effectively? So we have developed this platform called the Edge Compute Stack. It's a platform that we deploy for them in these edge environments. It works within the constraints of that environment. Often these environments are not like the data center environments. For example, we could have a store environment, right? A retail store environment where you have 10,000 stores.
Yeah, I generally don't try to put 10,000 hosts on the same vCenter server. That's a completely different.
Right? So 10,000 stores, 500 of them might be down at any given time. Another 500 might have intermittent issues. There might be security issues. Most of them might have no IT staff whatsoever in those stores.
Fleet management. You can't be reliant on, well, we'll do this update, but to be safe, we'll send a guy on site. That doesn't work. It'll take 3 weeks of scheduling and cost you as much as that box probably costs you to get out there.
Yeah.
So the Edge Compute Stack, right, with the technology that we have built into it, allows them to run software in this environment in a more effective way. Virtualization is part of this, right? So our DNA is virtualization. So we bring that capability there so you can virtualize and you can run multiple applications. But it's not just that, right? We're also bringing them the ability to orchestrate, to lifecycle management their applications in an effective way within the constraints of the edge environment. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the value add we are bringing. So in addition to the mindset change that we help these customers achieve, we're also giving them the tools to make that vision a reality.
So that's cool because, in the core data center, we focus with VCF on okay, we're going to patch vSphere, we'll patch the infrastructure components, we patch our stuff.
Right.
we'll patch your Kubernetes environment now, I guess.
Yes.
But that's in band. But you guys are pushing farther down in terms of helping with the application delivery
Yep.
and doing a true end-to-end. Because it looks like in a lot of cases, I assume y'all are replacing some, we'll call it a black box that did one app or a collection of those with a host that now can virtualize those.
Right. Absolutely. And just to make sure, right, that we are clear on this, a lot of our customers, right, do have data centers they're running, right?
Sure.
So we bring brilliant capabilities to them using the VCF technology that we have in those data centers. And then they have at the edge these environments like factory floors or the retail stores that they want to run. And in the middle, they also want connectivity. So what we have is a combination of all three things, right? All three capabilities. We're able to help them run their data centers and their cloud environment effectively. We have an SD-WAN solution to help them connect all of this to their edge environments. And now, through the edge compute stack, we also have the ability to run their edge environments in an effective way.
Well,
they have a complete solution.
And the SD-WAN is a powerful story because I would talk to some retail customers sometimes, and we're discussing the scope of what they're deploying. They're like, well, really, I only have these 2 VMs I really need on site. I go, well, why do you need them on site? They're like, well, the internet goes out. I'm like, okay, but this is an urban area that you can get 2 internet providers and a wireless. Could we just throw SD-WAN at it and put this workload in the data center? And, there are other cases where, electrical substation or something where blow off control, this will kill 10 people if it goes down. Like, okay, yeah, we obviously need that logo, but it is interesting that we can offer the compute, we can offer the orchestration, or we can say, let's just make your connection bulletproof back to the main data center too.
Absolutely, yeah. There are situations where you can do that, but so we work with a lot
factory
of
floors. You got to have it there for latency reasons, and that
We also work with the defense customers.
Yeah.
So I'll let the viewers think about all the scenarios there.
Take your pick and take your own guess. Absolutely. So I'm curious. Obviously, a lot of folks at VMware Explorer are talking about AI as a solution, and how does that extend to the edge? And how are customers able to take advantage of AI on the edge?
Yeah. So, Pete, that's a great question, right? So, AI and edge, those are probably 2 of the hottest things out there, and bring them together creates hype like none other, right? So, but let me cut to the chase and explain the 2 main ways that I see this area evolving. Edge AI, I mean. So, first of all, right, you have to think about how AI can actually help you do a better job with deploying compute and software at the edge, right? That's the first piece. The second piece is how can we as a company, right, help allow AI to do a better job of doing what it does. So those are 2 different things, right? So the first piece, right, where you are talking about how AI can help you do a better job of providing compute functionality to our customers, that's pretty critical. That is something that we have been working on, right? So for example, there are environments where connectivity is intermittent and applications tend to behave poorly, right, in those situations. So how can AI, using machine learning, figure out where there might be issues with the connectivity and tweak how the application might behave in those environments? Similarly, in order to improve the accuracy of some of the inferencing, we could change the amount of compute that is available to certain applications that are running in these environments. So there are all sorts of interesting things that can be done that we're looking at. But that's one aspect, right? The more interesting aspect is how can compute be leveraged at the edge to help AI do a better job? For example, the models that we typically use with AI, they tend to be very large, right? So how can we do pruning to get things to work more effectively in these edge environments where you don't have a lot of compute, where compute is at a premium, right? There are also scenarios where you're doing learning in many different locations, like 5,000 stores, right, that you're learning on.
Oh wow! So not just inferencing, but actually learning on
so
the
how
edge.
do you not take all the raw data and pump it up somewhere at its massive expense and then do the learning?
My MPLS bandwidth is very expensive, and
right? So federated learning is another thing, right? It's another tool that we bring to our customers where using federated learning, you can do learning in all these silos.
Without having to send all the video data or all the telemetry data from all the robots or whatever it is.
That's it. Yeah, you learn there and then you combine all that learning together to create one big model and then you put it back down in all of these places to do inferencing. So that's more exciting, right? That's the value that edge compute brings to the table for AI in the coming days.
That's very different than our core data center AI. We're like, okay, we need to get 40,000 hosts all talking to each other at 800 gigs per second. Like this is a very different approach, and it's cool.
It is.
Like
It's
this
so
is
cool
gonna be
that
a
they
lot
can
more
actually take advantage
cost
of it.
effective.
Absolutely.
It is.
So last question for you. I know you've been in this space for a long time, and I'm curious what, if you could, time machine 5 years from now, like how do you see this space evolving?
That's an interesting question, right? So the way I see edge evolving, it really is a reflection of how technology is playing a bigger and more important role in our lives in general. There used to be a time, right, when most of the tech jobs used to be available only in the tech sector. You have to be in the tech sector working for a tech company to have
Right.
a tech job.
And you go on monster.com back then.
Yeah. That's no longer the case,
Yeah.
right? So now what's happening is that you can go work for a grocery store and you could be an Uber tech person.
You can do AI at a grocery store.
You could do very
Nice.
cutting edge AI at a
I've
grocery
met a
store.
CTO of a grocery store, and he had a pretty aggressive software practice, and it was very
Absolutely.
different than 10 years ago, where it's like,
Right.
all right, point of sale, and let's try to spend less than 1% of our our OpEx budget on IT. It's a very
Right.
different world. So
Right. So we have I'll give an example of a grocery store in UK that we are working with. They have an innovation platform and 6,000 developers that are working on that platform, writing
6,000.
applications for their grocery store.
wow.
Right. So it's a different ball game. So you asked how do I see this environment in 5-6 years? I think for the next generation that is coming out of colleges and coming into this area, they will see a very different environment where they will be able to work in all these places, like in factories, in electric utilities, in all the mining, for example, in all these places, and be able to stay at the cutting edge of technology. That's what I see exciting about edge.
From a career basis, that's really cool, because a lot of OT operators I've met in plants over the years, they were guys who worked physically turning pumps at some point,
Right.
and then
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
worked
Right.
their way back into IT. They took a non-traditional role
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
And overalls, it wasn't something that new college grads are like, I'm
Right.
going to go out there and go optimize, plant operations.
Yes.
It sounds like this is shifting to where this is a frontier cutting edge job
Absolutely.
target. So
So we are what keeps me going, what keeps me moving forward here, right? In a way, I feel that I'm creating this environment for my kids, for all the kids who are coming down the line here,
Absolutely.
who are basically going to be able to do these exciting things without having to choose tech versus non-tech, right? Everything, they can choose whichever area they want to work on, whichever vertical they want to work on, and they'll be able to do very interesting technology there.
That's a really cool way to look at it.
this
Well-
this is great, because there's just a lot of these industries historically, it's like, oh, nothing cool happens there, don't go work there. And it's
That's changing.
yeah,
That
it's
is
changing.
that has changed. Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Saadat, thank you so much for joining us on Virtually Speaking, and enjoy the rest of your week here at Explore.
Thank you very much, Peter and John.